North Dakota state lawmakers wrapped up their special week-long session today after passing a disaster relief bill worth millions. The bill will help flood-damaged communities and oil and gas counties struggling to keep up with oil development. $30 million is the dollar amount the bill will appropriate to the Oil and Gas Impact Grant Fund, with priority going to emergency service requests. Although Democrats in the legislature wanted to see a figure more along the lines of $50 million, they say that $30 million is enough for now. The bill also includes a new Rebuilders Loan program to help either North Dakotans in select counties rebuild their flood-damaged home or buy a new one. Earlier this week, lawmakers also repealed a law requiring the University of North Dakota to keep its Fighting Sioux nickname. Tonight on the Jamestown College campus is the event Freedom Sings, which is put on by the First Amendment Center. Here to tell us more about the event is the Senior Vice President and Executive Director of the First Amendment Center, Gene Policinski. Mr. Policinski, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure, thank you.
Now, before we talk a little bit more about the event, can you tell me a little bit about what the First Amendment Center is?
Well, the First Amendment Center is an independent foundation-based group that really works on education and information. We don't lobby or litigate. We know from surveys we've been doing since 1997 that very few Americans can even name all 5 freedoms. So we think it's important to go out with programs that teach Americans about their basic freedoms and really help them understand what they mean and how they can be applied today.
Now, obviously the event tonight uses music, but in what ways do you teach Americans about the freedoms in the First Amendment?
Well, we decided that no matter how good we were as speakers, talking about a 220-year-old amendment to the Constitution probably wasn't going to set toes to tapping quite the way it would if that message was tied to music. So we go out with a show called Freedom Sings that really looks at free expression from music that's been banned and censored to music that's been a social anthem and has helped inspire Americans to go behind movements like the women's movement and civil rights and immigration movements and labor laws. I mean, almost every great political movement in this country has had music associated with it, and so we play a lot of that music.
Now, tell me a little bit more about the event tonight. I understand there are some pretty noteworthy musicians.
We're so blessed to have an office in Nashville where the musicians there are just extraordinary. And over the 10 years the show's been on tour, we've had about 24 musicians come in. And so tonight, they of course come and go in the show as they get paying jobs because they really are donating their time to our show. So tonight we have Ashley Cleveland, who has 3 Grammys, the only woman ever to win 3 Grammys in the rock gospel category. We have Des Dickerson, who was Prince's guitarist. If you see Prince in the Revolution or the movie Purple Rain, that's Des playing lead guitar with Prince. Jason White, who we joke about being our overachiever, he joined our group and then had a song band. He wrote a song for Tim McGraw that we'll talk about in the show that a lot of country stations wouldn't play because of its content. It mentioned abortion, and that was enough for them to take it off the air, which is just extraordinary to me. Dave Coleman, who's a brilliant young guitar player from Nashville, he's had music on a number of television shows. Sons of Anarchy, for example, you hear him playing on some of the music on that show, and some Discovery Channel stuff. And then Jonelle Mosser, who is in a city filled with vocalists, just some tremendous singers. Jonelle is among the most respected and I think the most popular singers in town. And she's sung with every major artist you can just name in country and pop, going back to Ringo Starr when Ringo was going to form a band after the Beatles. Jonelle was his lead singer. So she's an extraordinary singer. So you can come to the show and really be entertained, or you can come to the show and get a little bit of that message, but you're going to leave having had a lot of fun no matter what.
Now, you mentioned you've been doing these events for 10 years now. Is that 365 days a year?
No, we'd love to do it that often. Most of us have a day job. They have to go out and earn money as a musician. And at the center we have a lot of other programs, but we'll go out and do a dozen shows a year. I think in our busiest year we did 27 all around the country. But it's really been gratifying to see the reaction to the show because older people from the community come in and they hear music that they heard rock and roll as young people, and then we have younger members of the audience who hear hip hop and rap, and we talk about that music and the message in that kind of music, and so the show spans a lot of generations. But somebody seems to find music, I think, that they like or that they remember somewhere during the show.
Now, obviously the event tonight is here at the college, but do you do mostly college venues or community venues?
Well, it's interesting. That's a good question. We targeted the show originally for college campuses, but we found that there are a lot of places in communities where they have an interest in bringing the show. We were in Cheyenne, Wyoming, for example, at the community center there, Raleigh in North Carolina. So we think it's a show that spans, as I mentioned, a lot of age groups, a lot of interests. And while the basic point of the show was to reach out to younger citizens, because we know one of the reasons no one knows the 5 freedoms, 3 out of 100 this year could name the 5 freedoms, is schools don't have an opportunity to really teach about it. So we targeted it really for a college audience, but it seems to be popular in a lot of other venues.
Wow. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I just want to stress to folks who might be going, uh-oh, here we go.
Yeah.
You know, somebody's going to come out and talk about this amendment to the Constitution. You really can just enjoy the show on the music itself, the fabulous artists.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think we'll sneak a little message in there between things in the narration. It's a multimedia show, so we have some video, and it's just a fun time, and I think people will enjoy it as entertainment, but also hopefully get some information.
And it's definitely a subject that you can't learn enough about, it seems. So.
I hope we can learn a little bit more with every show.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us tonight, Mr. Policinski, and good luck with the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last night on the Jamestown College campus was the 6th Annual Character and Leadership Conference. Roxana Saberi was the keynote speaker of the event. In case of those of you who don't know, in 2009, Ms. Saberi was working on a book in Iran when Iranian authorities seized her at her apartment and then accused and imprisoned her for being a spy for the United States. Ms. Saberi soon gained international attention as many political leaders called for her release. She was eventually released, wrote a book about her experiences entitled Between Two Worlds, My Life and Captivity in Iran. I had a chance to talk with Ms. Saberi after the conference last night. You've done a lot of interviews over the course since 2009, since your imprisonment. You've done a lot of speeches and everything. I've got to ask you, do you ever get tired of talking about this issue?
You know, I feel really fortunate to have the freedom to speak, and I realized the value of that freedom when I was imprisoned in Iran, because I was stripped of that freedom and I was being punished for trying to use the freedom of speech. So I always try to remember how lucky I am to have this freedom, and I'm grateful that other people want to hear about what's happening in Iran and other parts of the world, and so many people want to know how they can help. So I'm very encouraged by that.
Now, you said a lot of people want to know how they can help. What is some of the biggest ways that people can help?
Well, there are some very easy ways, and it can just involve sitting at your computer and signing petitions online. That's what some people did for me when I was in prison. On Facebook, you can spread the word. You can write weblogs. Some people have put together demonstrations, just rallies in support of, I mean, I focus on Iran, so human rights in Iran, but you can do this really for anybody who needs help. And then it just depends on your own talents and capabilities. Some people write songs in support of prisoners in Iran. Some people have dedicated artwork and so on. So there are different kinds of opportunities.
Now, many people might know you for the book which you authored entitled Between Two Worlds. But do you ever feel like maybe the world, there's a past world you lived in where you were in Iran and you were imprisoned and in this big international spotlight, and now there's this other world now that you live in, like maybe that all didn't really happen? Do you ever feel that way?
So these are the two different worlds. Well, yeah, the before prison and after prison, they are kind of two different worlds, but I think all part of one journey, which I'm still on. And I think each part was in our lives. When I look back at my past, I think that it was meant to be in some way. Everything's connected. And if I hadn't gone through those steps before prison, going to Iran and reporting and writing a book, and going to prison, then I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today.
Now, one of the reasons why you were imprisoned is because you were working on a book in Iran. Obviously, you've had a lot to do since 2009, since your imprisonment. You were released, big reception to the United States. You wrote your other book, Between Two Worlds. Have you been working on your first book that you were originally working on, or what are you up to now?
I am working on that first book, which I never finished, and I need a little bit more discipline. I need to focus on writing that because I get distracted by other things. But I'm also traveling and doing talks, like places like Jamestown. And I also try to continue some journalism work, writing articles about the human rights situation in Iran.
Now, obviously, speaking at the Character and Leadership Conference, You've had some experiences with leadership and some roles and some aspects of leadership that are very beneficial to leadership. But what, in your opinion, have you gained since your experiences in Iran as far as leadership and into the insight of what leadership is?
Well, I think if I am a leader for anybody, I'm very humbled by that. I feel like I'm just one of many voices trying to speak out for people in Iran who can't speak out for themselves. I learned about leadership from my cellmates who I was in prison with, and they taught me that leadership is about humility. It's about being inspired to pursue a greater cause, even if you might pay a high price to do that. Many of them were standing up for human rights, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, and so on. And they were imprisoned for it, but they were doing this because they wanted others to be able to enjoy the same rights. So I think those are some key components of leadership, to have the cause and to be inspired, and also to be selfless like they were.
Now, when a lot of people think about Iran, they may think about the nuclear situation, and just recently the UN had a report about Iran and the nuclear state that they find themselves in right now. But do you think Iran is as bad as maybe it gets painted as?
Well, I think the regime that's governing Iran has, in terms of human rights, violated human rights in very bad way, and there have been reports about this, and there's even a special rapporteur from the UN that has been assigned to cover Iran's human rights case because it's so bad. In terms of the nuclear issue, I think the problem is that Iran has not been very transparent about its nuclear activities, and so there are a lot of suspicions. And Iran, of course, says this nuclear program is not meant for military use, but until it can be more transparent, then the international community doesn't seem to be able to trust it.
Now, as an author and a journalist, you have the unique ability to write about your experiences and be heard in that way. But do you ever lend your opinion in a political realm, maybe when the U.S. is looking at how to deal with Iran or the relationship in that area?
Well, I've written op-ed articles which have been published in some national newspapers, so if the Iranian or American officials read those, and I think they keep up to date on what's in the papers about Iran, then they'll see my opinions there. And then when I've traveled overseas, for example, I went to Brazil last year and I met with a government official and spoke in the Congress there. I also spoke to some congressional staff members and congressional members in America. Then I talked to them as well, but it's not like I have daily direct contact with them, telling them what I think should be done. And I usually just focus on the human rights aspect, and I don't go into what I think politically should be done.
Now, you were imprisoned and released 2 years ago. Have you been back to Iran since, or do you plan on going back sometime, or do you hope to go back sometime?
I have not been back. I hope to go back someday, but it depends on the political situation right now. It's not a good time for me. So if it gets better, I hope I can someday, because I did fall in love with the country, and so many of the people were very kind to me.
All right. Is there anything else you would like to add?
I don't think so. I think you asked a lot of wonderful questions. It's great to be here in Jamestown, back in my home state of North Dakota. Glad I got here before the snow. But everybody here has been very warm and welcoming and asked wonderful questions and made me feel very much at home.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This is Matthew Nies reporting for JCTV in Jamestown.
Leaders of Italy and Greece moved forcefully today in an attempt to reinvigorate their governments, under mounting pressure from other European governments to control their shaky economies. The Italian Senate approved a package of austerity measures in a first step to ease Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi from office, and the Greek Parliament finalized details of a national unity government. Meanwhile, officials across Europe and the world look on to see what kinds of effects these actions will produce. Well, today was, of course, Veterans Day. 1918 was the first such remembrance. However, the holiday was called Armistice Day at that time because of the armistice that was signed between the Allies and the Germans in a railroad car in France, which ended World War I on the 11th hour, on the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. 3 years later, on November 11th, 1921, the tomb of the unknown soldier was dedicated in Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. And while today was a day for remembering our veterans, it looks like it may also be a memorable one due to its being one of our last days of warm temperatures. Jessica Gulseth is here to tell us about what our weekend will look like weather-wise, as well as take a look at the coming week. Jessica?
Thanks, Matthew. Today is a pretty special day. Not only is it Friday, but it's Veterans Day and 11-11-11. Many people consider today to be a day of luck. This sequence of numbers only happens every 100 years. Also, tonight the Jimmies will be playing basketball in the Civic Center, and the Freedom Sings concert will be going on tonight here on campus as well. So come enjoy some great music and show a little Jimmie pride. The weather for today seems unreal. The sun was out and we saw a high of about 50 degrees. Today will be mostly clear with a low of about 30 degrees. Saturday will get the weekend going with a high of 50 degrees yet again, but as the day progresses into night, temperatures will drop to about 30-31 degrees, and then the rain and snow will begin to fall. There's about a 20% chance of rain before 11 p.m. and a slight chance of snow after 11. Sunday won't be as warm as Saturday, but we'll see higher than average temperatures. It should be pretty sunny with a high in the mid-40s. Monday will start the week off with temperatures in the mid-40s, much like Sunday. Tuesday and Wednesday will start to cool down a bit, as Tuesday will have temperatures in the upper 30s, and Wednesday will see temperatures in the low 30s. That's the weather for today. Have a nice weekend, Jamestown, and you as well, Mr. Nies. And now we'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Jessica. Last night, the Jimmie men's wrestling team had a home duel against the University of Regina. The meet was the Jimmies' first dual competition of the year. Although the Jimmies beat the Cougars in 6 out of 8 matches, the Jimmies started out with a 12-point deficit due to their not having wrestlers in the 125 and 141-pound weight classes. It came down to the final match of the night, but the Jimmies were able to secure the victory. The men's soccer team lost a close match yesterday against the University of Great Falls in the AII tournament in Salt Lake City, which means their year is done. The Jimmies had a great season, though. Not only did they make the playoffs, but they also posted an 11-8 overall record. Well, there's a host of athletic games tonight, tomorrow night, and all this weekend for Jamestown College athletic teams. The Jimmie men's basketball team is hosting Doane College this evening and Briarcrest College tomorrow night. The women's basketball team played on the road tonight against Dakota Wesleyan College. They also play away tomorrow against Mount Marty College. The Jimmie men's football team will play their final game of the season tomorrow afternoon against St. Xavier University in Chicago. Tonight, the Jimmie volleyball team started their run at the AII tournament at Arizona Christian University in Phoenix. The Jimmies had 2 pool games tonight, with the top 2 teams from the 3-team pool advancing to the next round. Good luck to all the Jimmie athletic teams this weekend, and be sure to tune in to JCTV on Monday for all the scores and stats from this weekend's games and tournaments. Well, thank you for joining me tonight, Jamestown. At JCTV, it's always our pleasure to connect the campus with the community. Be sure to check newsstands for the new issue of the Collegian, and be sure to visit our website at www.jccollegian.com. I'm Matthew Nies in Jamestown.